everyone, welcome to a new tutorial, Jumpstart Your Creativity with Justine. I'm Justine Hovey and I'm excited to be here today. I'm going to be working with the Sunshine Shaker die. I have been really enjoying the nice weather lately, so I'm just inspired by bright colors, suns, and summer. So I'm going to get this taped down onto my cardstock and die cut for you because this isn't just your regular die that cuts out a sun. It actually cuts the sun out from the cardstock. So I'm going to run this through my Gemini Junior here, and it's an electronic die cutting machine, and I'm going to get that all cut out. And you'll see that once I take it off, I just got to remove the purple tape, and it's cut out that sun into the card panel of mine. It also cuts out a stitched circle, which is really great for stretching your dies. You could use that in another project or on this card. So I'm now going to take another card panel. Both of these measure 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to draw the circle from the sun on the background so I know whereabouts my scene is going to be. Now I'm going to go ahead and mask off an area. So I have grabbed a piece of purple tape. It's just like Post-it tape. It's going to be really easy to take off. And I'm going in with some Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink and a blending tool. And I'm just rubbing it to get a very, very dark color there for the water. And so now I have my horizon line when I take off the tape. And I don't need to worry about the side of it getting dirty there because you're not going to see it with my sun. I'm going to fill in the rays, so again, don't worry about that. So I now have my water completed. Next, I'm going to grab my mini cloud stencil and some tumbled glass distress ink. I'm using regular distress ink because I don't believe the tumbled glass comes in an oxide form yet. And I'm going to grab my blending tool, a fresh sponge, and I'm going to go ahead and ink up along the clouds. This is going to give it a sky, like a clouded overlook in the sky, and just create more detail. I wanted to break up the blue sky from the blue water because I thought that would look a little bit too much. So this is a perfect way of doing it. So when I go ahead and remove the stencil here, you'll see I got the 2 clouds, and when I put my sun on top of it, I have this adorable little scene in the center of my card. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is ink up another white panel here with some Versamark ink. I am going to emboss this using some sand embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. And some of you might think that you could use the little pieces that you had die cut earlier to do this because I'm going to use this for the rays of the sun. However, I found it way too difficult to ink up the tiny little pieces and then have them stay in place while I was heat embossing. I did try to kind of not be wasteful and have to cut another sheet, but it didn't really work too well for me. So I thought doing a whole panel like this would be useful. So once you dry it with a heat tool, it is going to be just slightly darker, I find, than the original powder. I'm now going to go in and die cut that again using my Sun Shaker die so that I can use the rays of it in order to add some interest to my card. So I'm just going to glue the 2 panels together here so the frame is perfectly in place. You could also make this into a shaker card. That would work as well if you wanted to add even more detail to it, but I wanted to keep things simple. So as you can see, I'm grabbing my 3D foam tape and I'm cutting on an angle so that I get little triangles each time. That way they can fit perfectly inside the rays of the sun and I can pop up the pieces that I just cut out. I think they look really cool when they're all finished. So now I'm just adding the pieces that I had just die cut using the sand embossing powder. And that is going to be the end of it. If you don't have sand embossing powder, of course, you could have just inked up the rays in yellow ink. You could have just created the whole scene behind the card. It's really up to you. Or you could have embossed in a different color. There's so many different options you can do for this. So for my next card here, you can see I have the panel cut out here. And I have my card base masked off. So you can see that my card panel later is going to have a white frame around it, and I want to keep that white frame. So that's why I added that purple tape around my card to protect my area. I've traced my circle in here so that I know where I'm going to place my shaker bits. And I'm going to create a shaker card this time. So this is what the die is technically intended to be used for. So I'm going to go ahead and create my background. Now, because I have the whole area masked off, I don't have to worry about anywhere except for the very, very bottom of my card base, but I'm not going down that deep, so I should be fine. I'm going in with some abandoned coral, followed by carved pumpkin and squeezed lemonade. Because I'm using Distress Oxide, I don't really need to worry too much about harsh lines, so I'm just going in directly on top of the cardstock there and creating just a very, very quick dark look to my card. And I'm going in a circular motion each time just to buff out any of the harsh lines that may have occurred. I also like to go back in between the colors just to make sure they are nice and blended together and that there's a seamless line between them. You can go ahead and erase your line right now. I didn't have much luck doing that, but you won't see it anyway since it's pretty much covered. I'm going to go in now and remove my masked area so you can see this white frame around it. I always have a white frame around my card. It's just my personal style and my personal preference. I like to work on card panels rather than directly on the base. I think adding a frame just finishes the card in my opinion, as well as if I have to throw away a card, I don't feel too bad throwing out a small piece versus a whole card base. So now I have my area all done. I have my distress ink done, and I'm going to go in with some foam tape. Now I've double layered my foam tape so that it's nice and thick. If you want to create a shaker card just like I'm doing now, My Favorite Things has some really great pouches. So they're pre-made plastic pouches that you can put down and save you all this time. I don't have any. I only have some of the treat pouches, which are very, very large so that they could hold things like M&Ms or Skittles or Smarties. And those are too big for me to put sequins around. So I'm just leaving it with a piece of acetate today. So if you don't have those pouches, of course, you could use a piece of acetate. All of your stamp sets come on pieces of acetate, so you'll have some in your stash, I'm sure, if you don't have some from previous packaging. So I've laid down my window, and now I'm going to cut very, very small pieces and go all the way around my circle of the sun here. I don't want the shaker bits to go into the rays. It's going to be too big of an area, and I don't have a lot of space between the edges of the rays and the sides of my paper, if you've noticed. So I'm cutting very, very small pieces for the foam tape, and I'm just going to go along as I go and finish off the circle. All you have to make sure is that there are no spaces in between for things like beads or sequins to fly out of, because they will find a way out if there is a way out. So now I have that all finished. I have my card base all finished, and now I'm just going to go in and put some of the sequins and things into the center of my card. So all of my sequins and pretty embellishments today come from Pretty Pink Posh. I'm using the mini silver stars, some yellow jewels, as well as some silver jewels. And I'm going to make sure that those silver jewels are actually facing upwards because the backs of them are gray. And they will stay right side up in the shaker because there's not enough room for those big ones to flip around. So once I'm satisfied, I'm going to push them all into the center. I can still slightly see the outline of my pencil there, so I know whereabouts it is, and I'm going to lay down my card here with the window shaker. What's really important is that the foam tape doesn't touch any of the sequins when you're laying it down. If not, it just gets messy. So just make sure they're all pushed in the center, and then you can go ahead and shake away. Now the last thing I wanted to do was just add some foam tape here to my corners as well as the center, just because the only foam tape there is being supported by the sun. It is going to get a bit saggy on my card, so I just want to make sure that that's fully supported and ready to go. So I'm jumping straight into my next card. Now I have already inked it up. You've seen me do the ink blending before. For this one I left out the abandoned coral at first, so I only did some squeezed lemonade and carved pumpkin. I added a spritz of water on it with some Distress sprayer bottle. And now I'm going to go ahead and die cut it with the sun dye. Just make sure that your paper is fully dry before you start die cutting. So I'm attaching that using some purple tape, and I did decide to go in with some abandoned coral. Originally, I had decided to create just the die cut of the colored pieces, but then I decided I'm actually going to make this into a card front. So I went in with a third color. I thought it needed a little bit in that abandoned coral color, and now I'm ready to go and die cut. So I'm just going to set that off to the side. I'm going to fold my card base. All of my card bases today measure 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 when they are folded, and they're top folding cards. I'm just going to place this onto my cardstock here, my card base, using some Tombow Mono liquid adhesive. And all of my cards are going to be framed on the base today, whether I show that in the video or not, just to save some time. I also went ahead and die cut the sun again using some black cardstock, and I'm using all of the pieces that I had cut out from the black cardstock to fill in the rest of this card. Originally, I had not decided whether or not I was going to use that black center. I thought it might be a little too dark, but I did end up using it and embossing a sentiment on top of it. I love the way that the black really makes the background pop on this, and it just makes it for a really fun modern card. Now, if you're wondering where those colored pieces went that I just die cut out of the card panel, don't you worry, I saved them all off to the side, and I am going to lay these down using a white base. So I went ahead, die cut the Sunshine Shaker into a piece of white cardstock, and now I'm going in and I am adding all of those colored pieces I just cut out. I don't really like waste, especially when I've done all that work blending ink, so I try to find ways to use them. So I'm going to go along now and just add all of these to my card. I'm paying attention that the orange ones are more towards the bottom and the yellow towards the top, but you could switch things up a bit and make things interesting and put the orange rays at the top and the yellow at the bottom. It's completely up to you. So now I'm just finishing putting that last ray on here, and we're going to take a look at all the backgrounds we've created. So the scenic sun with the sand embossed rays, the shaker card, and then these two that are sort of a two-in-one with the black rays against the colorful background, and again you can add that to the center, or the colored rays on a white background. I'm now going to go ahead and add the sentiments. There is a coordinating sunshine sentiment die for this Sunshine Shaker, and it's really perfect for this release because there's so many summer stamps. So I actually went in and cut one down, the You Are My Sunshine, and I am going to be stamping that in the center of the black sun, and I am going to use some Versamark ink, and I am going to heat emboss this using some white embossing powder. Now, if I were smart, I would have used an embossing bag here, and I didn't, and I made a complete mess. So what I ended up doing was cutting out another black circle so that I could just glue it on top, because the embossing powder just didn't want to stick to the sentiment only. It wanted to stick everywhere, as you could see here. So I used an embossing bag the next time. I heat embossed it, used my craft heater to heat that up, and you can see that I have a perfect You Are My Sunshine. The rest of the sentiments I'm going to stamp along a strip here. When I cut my card panels, I cut them down to 4 by 5 1/4, which means that I have a 1/2 inch strip left over. And I save these for MFT sentiments specifically because all of their sentiments seem to fit so well in them. So again, zero waste, and I am going to stamp a whole bunch of the sentiments from the Sunshine stamp. So You Are My Sunshine for my soul, sending you sunshine, You Are My Sunshine, and in the bottom left-hand corner you can see the stamp, and it has a brush lettered sunshine as well as a coordinating die that says sunshine. But I did decide that they were already intricate enough. I didn't want to add a die on top of them that said sunshine, and all the stamps conveniently said sunshine anyway. So I just finished those off with some sentiments cut down into rectangles. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you're interested, subscribe to My Favorite Things channel, and you can check out more videos here on the bottom that are suggested. I will see you next month in July for another video of Jumpstart Your Creativity. Bye!